where they...
He's got it. Got to be him because
Sure.
Mason and I were playing with it earlier. It was fine.
Hello.
Hi, Dave. Can
No,
you hear
not
us?
here.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
David, that's our quorum. I haven't heard from Peter. You didn't call me, did he call you?
No.
No. I'd like to call this meeting of the stated session of City Council to order. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of the flag. We ask tonight for your supernatural wisdom as we make some tough decisions in this meeting. Help us carefully consider the relevant information that has been gathered. May those sharing the information give us pertinent points so that we all clearly understand, and help us be innovative as we brainstorm solutions. Also tonight we take a moment of silence for our dear friend Richard McAteer, who passed away a short time ago. He was a true visionary for our city, and he was engaged in many of our activities, including the individual who gave the city the idea of an arch trail, which later became the Carl Sterner Arch Trail. Rest in peace, Richard. We'll miss you many days. We will miss you. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
Flag
of
of the
America,
United States
and
of
to the
America,
republic for which it stands,
republic for which it stands, one nation,
indivisible, with liberty and
indivisible,
justice
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Give me a second.
Are you down there? She needs a pillow.
I do. Mr. Brown. Mr. Ettinger. Mr. Milan. Mr. O'Connell.
Here.
Dr. Ruggles.
Here.
Mrs. Sultana. Here. Mayor Pinto.
Here. At this time, we have approval of the agenda. I would like to add, go ahead, make your motion first.
Yeah, I move to approve the agenda.
I seconded.
There's a second, moved and seconded. I'd like to amend the agenda to include under, at the next item before public comment, the presentation by the Nurture Nature Center on their issue that's on the agenda this evening.
When do you going to
I
have?
move that, right, 6A.
I will second that.
You want to put both of them together, or do you want to do them?
I will do them separately.
Okay.
Roll call on that amendment, Madam Clerk.
Okay, hold on. Mayor Pinto.
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana.
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell.
Aye.
Now we have to make an emotion. We have Roger and Mrs. Sultana for the actual agenda, so we just need a vote on the final.
No, we have
I
another amendment.
One more amendment. I would like to amend the agenda to remove item C under new business.
I'll move that. I'll second that movement, that motion. Any discussion? Roll call.
Okay. All right, now we're going to go down. Hold on. Mr. O'Connell.
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles.
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana.
Aye.
Mayor Pinto.
Aye.
Okay, now for the final vote. We have Dr. Ruggles and Mrs. Sultana on final vote for the agenda, the amended. Okay, we're going to go Mayor Pinto.
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana.
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell.
Aye.
Thank you. At this point, I'll turn the meeting over.
We have to
I-
approve the minutes.
I'm going to approve the minutes first.
Move to approve the minutes.
I seconded.
Moved and seconded for our organizational meeting, our year-end meeting. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. O'Connell.
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles.
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana.
Aye.
And Mayor Pinto.
Aye. I'd like to just preface this Nurture Nature Foundation and Nurture Nature Center presentation by saying that this is truly an Easton project, and if it comes to fruition, I think it'll be really good for our young people who are, this is an education center, an environmental science center that is education more than, it's not really tourism. I mean, although I know that Rachel is expecting tourists to show up, it's really an education center. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a meeting with many of the regional school district superintendents, two of whom are here this evening. Both Sarah and Dave will speak as part of the presentation, but I just want to say that I think this project is what really makes our city a good community. It is the first step we're asking City Council to take. Is by far step one of probably 100. But it is an important one to be done by the end of this month because it's, and I'll be in Washington next week lobbying the Economic Development Administration for this grant. It's a grant. It's the approval to move forward on a grant for $4 million from the federal government, the EDA. And to speak more about that, who should I introduce? Dave, or should I introduce you, Dave, to give the introductions, or Rachel? This has been a team effort. It really has been. It's been going on for 2 years.
The mic kind of fell into the
That's
podium.
Mazin's fault. He's the new guy.
So as an introduction, we're here tonight to ask for council to support a resolution to approve a grant application to the EDA for $4 million. We've been working on this for quite a while. The status of the property right now, as some members of council know, we've approved a preferred developer to this point, and we've also hired an environmental consultant with a team of Helmer Company and HDR. Right now, they are working on creating the cleanup plan for the property, which will then be adopted by DEP, and then we can kind of move ahead with the environmental cleanup, which we expect that will take about 24 months. And at the end of that, we're hoping to hand over a property that's suitable for redevelopment. It was a former scrapyard, and it's got a decent amount of environmental issues that we need to correct. And this will be truly a renaissance of that corridor and of that property. So while we're working on, a number of factors outside of this, we're also moving ahead with trying to forge a place for a new environmental education center. Currently, Nurture Nature, and I'm not going to steal Rachel's thunder, but during this process of procuring, a preferred developer and trying to merge a science center into that corridor, and hopefully, with the assistance of Lafayette College and their support and participation, I think we are going to have a real quality center with genuine programming and research, and there's so many ways this could go. And the fact that the EDA is offering this one-time opportunity for us to apply for money and take advantage of that, I praise City Council for taking that plunge. And while there's so many moving parts here, the trajectory is that the first order of business is to get that property cleaned up, and the second order of business is to get a healthy development there, and the third order is to get this part of that project built and make it successful. So that's kind of like the overall status of where we are. And with that, I'll introduce it to Rachel. She can tell you a little bit about what she does, and go from there.
Hello, everyone. Maybe I'm supposed to report in Rachel Hogan-Carr, Nurture Nature Center, but also 323 High Street, Easton, PA, Easton resident, lifelong Easton resident. It's really a pleasure to address you today. Hello and welcome. As you know, most of you know and have visited Nurture Nature Center. We just celebrated 10 years, actually, since 10 years since we opened our doors to the public, I should say. So the business of Nurture Nature Center actually began many years before with work and outreach related to flooding issues and environmental issues and risks and hazards related to flooding. And as we began that outreach work, it became very obvious that environmental issues were really front and center in many people's minds, in federal agencies and state and local agencies and residents alike. And it was 10 years ago that we opened the doors to the public with a program about flooding and invited everyone in, and it was very well received. And then people started coming in and saying, but what about this issue, and what about this issue, and what about this environmental issue? And over the years, our center has grown and really become a special and I think one-of-a-kind location for high-quality environmental education. And we use science, art, and community dialogue programs together to do this. As the mayor mentioned, we recently had a meeting with superintendents from regional school districts where we were able to lay out the wide scope of what we do, and someday we'll get a very formal presentation for anyone who's interested on the range of programs that we do, which have ranged from science lectures and film screenings and discussion forum models that have been disseminated nationally to, as Dave Hopkins just referenced, research work that is also national in scope, working with National Weather Service and other federal agencies across the country to help those agencies improve how they communicate risk. And we've really come through the years of our work to a nexus where we've come to be recognized as a national leader for what we do in risk communication and environmental education models. And locally, we've become, I think, a very important anchor institution and well beloved for the kinds of programs and supports that we've given to other community organizations. And we are doing all this in a building footprint that has constrained our ability to do as much as we would like to do. And I say that with the most love for our building because if you've ever been there, it's the International Order of the Odd Fellows Hall, built in 1914, which is the same year that Ted Keel was born, actually, and he used to point that out. So for those of you who knew our founder, that's a bit of a tender spot for us. But the facility has really limited our ability to serve school groups. And so we have the superintendent of Easton Area School here, and in the years leading up to this, some of the teachers in the district have come and tried to have field trips, and we've done it. And they've been great, and they want to have more of them, but we're limited by how many we can meet. We're limited by not having a bus loading zone. We're limited by having this amazingly spectacular staircase that students are not well equipped to walk up. The building was just simply not designed for this purpose, and so we've kind of outgrown ourselves. And so recognizing this for a number of years, we were really, really delighted at the opportunity to start thinking about where else could we take the wonderful things that we do and grow and expand them. So what we're proposing and what we're dreaming of now is Nurture Nature Center, but bigger and better. It's going to be more community science, more art, more dialogue, more national research, and we've got some great community, college partners, and we've partnered with colleges and universities across the country as well. And we hope to really become, even deeper embedded in that work in a new and larger facility. And we want to have a layout that's built to do this and that will be able to accommodate more school groups. And so with that, we've been really excited and working very hard and doggedly on trying to get together the things that are needed for this application. And Nurture Nature Foundation, which is the parent foundation that has supported our inception and supported us in our growth, has equally come to the table to provide funds and to contribute to this project as well. Our board president from Nurture Nature Foundation and NNC alike, we have kind of two boards that help us out. Both of them are really deeply committed to the vision that we have ahead of us, and have in many ways redirected their own lives to support this venture that's happening here in Easton. So I feel really fortunate and lucky at this point to be standing where we are with the support of those organizations behind us, and hopeful that the really quality work that's been done by city staff as well is coming through in this proposal, which I think is shaping up nicely. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have regarding our plans and our ideas. One of the highlights that will be in addition to the center that we don't have now is a planetarium, and that is built into this proposal and has been really well received by the superintendents and area schools that we've talked to about this. Those of you who are local here will remember when Easton had one, and your kids probably all went to it every year as I did. But the frontiers of space are changing rapidly. The James Webb Telescope is up in the sky right now, and space exploration is really we're at a pivotal moment where there's so much to learn about Earth science from what we do in space right now. And so I think the addition of a planetarium will be a great attraction for tourists and locals alike. I think that will really be an anchor addition to house, and of course we'll continue our Science on a Sphere and other programming that we do as well, with more space and more exhibits and more footprint to do it in.
When Rachel came to me almost, 7 years ago about the Science on the Sphere,
Mm-hmm.
and you told me, Mayor, there's not a facility in the country that has less than 250,000 people visiting it every
That's
year.
true.
And we need to get to that. And our kids, I taught at Shawnee when we had a planetarium.
Right.
And Mr. Wagner and Mr. Kressler did a great job. And that is, you're absolutely right. I watched the science that's happening today that's no longer fiction.
Right. Right.
And it's happening. And I also really thank you for your work on our climate action plan. I was watching 60 Minutes, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago now, when they did a whole section on the changing climate of Europe and its impact on the wine industry.
Yeah.
And that the wines of Champagne, France, etc., has now moved to England because England has a climate that is what France had 30 years ago. And they're getting more days over 85 degrees, and they're starting to grow their wine industry. So my favorite program that I witnessed at Nurture Nature was the value of honeybees. I mean, that was, I walked out of there, I didn't know half the things I learned that night.
Right.
And I think that's what's important about this center is that adults and young people alike can go and learn something and use it. I don't kill honeybees anymore.
Thank
My
you.
yard,
Thank
just,
you.
I plant honeybee gardens and everything so that
You can get certified as a watershed-friendly property, I bet. If you go onto our website, there's a link where you can certify yourself with Penn State Extension Office. We partnered together and have a grant. You can get a sign that says watershed-friendly if you're managing your yard right in South.
I'll have to check that out. I don't manage it well because I have more weeds than flowers, but
That's good. That's good
I
for
know.
watershed-friendly.
they're so anyway, Dr. Ruggles.
Yeah, I just want to chime in for the planetarium because I was out in the Badlands in South Dakota, and it's national park, and they put on a show at night, and the stars there are just unbelievable, But the thing that really got me was they showed an image that was acquired from the Hubble telescope. And he talked about how big our galaxy is, okay? And he showed this picture, and there were literally thousands of galaxies.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it, and somebody in the audience said, well, how much of the sky is that picture? And it just made me feel so small. But those are the types of things that you can tell somebody,
Right.
but when you see it, it just becomes so much more, impacting, when you actually see it. And I think your sphere also is a similar type of thing. You see things on that, and it's like, oh my goodness, And I will say on the climate action plan, we are taking steps with that.
Yep.
The police department is seriously considering purchasing basically hybrid, but it thousands of pounds of decrease in emissions per year per vehicle.
And that's something.
That's something.
Get the police department to accept a hybrid cruiser that doesn't have to go 120 miles an hour. And our chief is supporting it, so we're really excited about that.
Excellent. And we actually have a funding proposal in the works right now to expand education based on the climate action plan and continue to use it as a tool for educating the community to support your efforts. So
The one thing I like about this proposal is that it is education. As an educator myself, it's a project that I think young people are going to be they're more visual than anything with their computers and things. They're not as reader savvy as we may have been in the past, but I think located along the picturesque natural trout producing stream of the Bushkill Creek, even though it was a brownfield, I'm really excited about getting the $1 million grant to clean it up. The one thing about it is very few people, unless you're an avid fisherman, know that it's one of the top 5 natural trout producing streams in the country. And we've been written up in Fisher magazines all over the country. And I just think that this is, with the the outside learning center and the boardwalk and everything along the creek, I think it's a really good opportunity. Now, I'm not pessimistic in any way. I know we're going to get this grant, but it's also going to get $4 million from the Nurture Nature Foundation to match that grant. We're going to get $2 million from the city, which we'll talk about when time comes and we bring this project to fruition. But I'm excited that it can happen, and it's, as Dave said, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to get it from the EDA. They normally don't fund projects like this. It's usually economic development, job creation, and we're just moving jobs from one part of the city to the other part. I know you'll have a few more, but it's not the job creator that unfortunately these warehouses are.
Right.
But they're getting state money too. So, and I was really impressed with the presentation you made to the superintendents. Mm-hmm. What did we have there? 24? There's a lot of them. I know that, and Sarah and David are here, but we'll hear from them next. But
I tried to do the math of how many students it represented, and that number had a lot of zeros. Pretty quickly. Yeah, with the various districts, how much they were representing.
Yeah.
it was a really special opportunity.
Well, I'm very excited about, I can't talk about Sarah's school district, but I'm really excited. I still believe that the Easton School District is a really fine educational district. If your kid goes there and you're an involved parent engaged in their learning activities, they're going to do extremely well. We do graduate merit scholars, national merit scholars, and we do have kids going to Ivy League schools and some of the best colleges in the country. I just believe that education is a very important part of our society, and I thank David for the work that he's doing there, because I know we've come a long way, and before him, John Reinhardt laid a foundation for the community school at Paxenosa and some of the improvements that are made there. And I think, people can't believe that I was out supporting the Palmer School. I believe very strongly that the one credit that this school district administration is going to get, and school board members for the last 10 years, has been their focus on the facilities. Because facilities, I know some people may look at it a waste of taxpayer money, but unfortunately facilities do help kids learn. And I've been through Cheston, I've been through March, I've been through Paxenosa. It also takes a good staff, and we're very fortunate. All three of our elementary schools have really good teachers. So this is going to be an opportunity for them to use it.
Mayor, maybe do you want to put it on the record, because only three members of council, including yourself, were invited to an open house, if you will, at Nurture Nature. Do you want to just
You may do
tell?
that.
All right. Well, in preparation for this application, for this grant application to the EDA, Nurture Nature had an open house, if you will, easiest way to describe it. And they invited area superintendents from not only Pennsylvania, but also from New Jersey, spearheaded by the two superintendents behind me, Sarah Bellotti from North Warren, and then from our hometown, David Piparato. Sarah, who consequently served on the EASD board some time back and lives here in the area in Pennsylvania, and consequently, she informed me that a lot of New Jersey superintendents live in the area as well. So
And
never
finance people.
yeah, and finance people who are also controllers and former city
Unnamed.
finance personnel. So Rachel and her team put together an overview of what they do and a high-level vision of what this could be, and engaged with the education community, and asked them not only to support this project and this application, if anything, but also for a commitment to engage them further to help mold environmental science at the high school level and below. So this project can take into consideration that input. So I guess I gave a decent overview. Rachel, if you want to say anything else.
And received a letter of support.
Yeah, we received
Well,
many.
go ahead.
Yeah, we received many letters of support following following that
superintendents.
breakfast from the superintendents from the districts that they represented. And for anyone who's ever put together a grant application, I'll say that they sent the letter of support the following day, immediately, with very quick turnaround, and it was very heartwarming, but also very gratifying that many of them were saying, yes, let's please continue the conversation. And Nurture Nature Center, I sort of alluded to the fact that we developed in response to what the community wanted initially, and we're very much intending to retain that attitude of finding out what it is area school districts and continuing to find out all the time what residents care about and developing our programming from that ground up. In fact, I was just telling them, I was on the phone today with a New Jersey school that attended that breakfast, that reached out and asked if we would help advise on the garden that their middle school green team is going to be put together, and if they could come visit our garden and get environmental science curriculum from us and help shape their grant proposal. And that's exactly what the kind of thing we'd love to see continue to grow.
Well, today we met with the developer of 185 South 3rd Street, and obviously the most important topic we met to talk about the P word. But in addition to parking, we learned a little bit more about their green building, and I was very impressed. I won't steal their thunder about some of the things they're doing, but it's going to be a good opportunity for other people to see what developers can do that are good for the environment.
That's great.
I was impressed with some of the things they were talking about.
Very good.
Do you want to have
Sarah would be
David,
first, or
yeah.
David? It's up to you guys.
whoever's taller?
Taller is David.
I was just kidding.
Sarah, for the record, we just need to give you your name and
Sure.
address.
Sure. Sarah Bellotti, 331 Dogwood Terrace.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Of course. Billott. And Dave's up here too.
David Piperato, Piperato, and I am not an Easton resident.
You're not in East, I still need your address.
Okay. 568 Higher Mill Road, Heyer, Mill, separate word, Road, Nazareth, Pennsylvania. 18064.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As the mayor discussed and as Mr. Campos and Ms. Carr were talking about, we were able to have a summit with superintendents from both Warren County, Hunterdon County, and Morris County in New Jersey, and also with the Lehigh Valley. And the one I would say takeaway from that, in addition to just the excitement that I saw in the room after Ms. Carr's presentation, was people just didn't realize that something this spectacular was right here. And so I think the thought of expanding that to a facility that could accommodate field trips, that could accommodate additional professional development for our staff, was something that was extremely appealing, to the superintendents that we met with and that we spoke with and that came to learn. And like Ms. Carr said, we're ready on the spot to write letters of support. That's how strongly they felt about the programming that was described and being offered. One of the things that I think we often struggle with is if we want to go to a science center, we have to go to Newark or Philadelphia. And even pre-COVID, school districts, especially elementary schools, are hesitant to send students that far. You get stuck on the turnpike, it ends up being a 12-hour day for little first graders. It's not ideal. Having something of that caliber here in Easton, I think is mind-boggling. As a lifelong Easton resident, or Easton area resident, I should say, Easton resident, the idea that something like this is within our grasp to have here is just so exciting. To be able to offer that to the students, Easton, Bethlehem, Allentown, and also across the river in New Jersey, it's just an exceptional opportunity. And the amount of programming that their Nature Nurture is currently doing is just, it's remarkable. They're combining science with art. They're doing things that kids are interested in. They're doing youth summits. They're doing professional development with NASA. It's just things that our staff wants. It's things that teachers want. It's things that students want. And, this idea of it being a hub for field trips and for tourism, I just think that they have such a solid plan and they have such strong programming. I'm really excited to be, able to support it and to kind of, come in and say this is a fantastic idea for us to be able to apply for this grant from the federal government to bring something of this caliber here. And I know the three of you have strong ties to education, and it's so nice to have a city council that has those ties to education, that understands the value of that for our community, for our children, and also just for our economic growth here in Easton. So thank you, and thank you, Ms. Carr.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sure.
It's really hard to add anything to what Sarah just said. First of all, thank you. It's great to be here. Mayor, thank you for
Glad to have you here.
kind words about the Easton Area School District. I'm truly blessed to have landed here and to be the superintendent. If you think back to your days when you were in school, some of us, it was a little longer ago than others, I think most of us would agree that what resonated most with us, or does your children, are those times when they can really experience learning, when they can get involved in learning and participate, and get their hands dirty, roll up their sleeves, problem solve, think critically. And I think the Nurture Nature Center will offer so many students the opportunity to do that. And as a result, spark their interest in environmental sciences. And as Sarah said, provide us an opportunity to bring many more students to the new Nurture Nature Center versus what we can do now. I don't want it to act as if it's not wonderful as it sits. I was amazed. I hadn't been there before. The sphere just blew my mind. I'm easily impressed, but the technology was just amazing. And so this is a class act organization. And I think, as was described throughout this presentation, everybody involved here is very much committed to making this the best it can be. And we benefit as the Easton Area School District from that. So you certainly don't need my endorsement, but you have it. And I was sitting that day with Joe Roy from Bethlehem. He was very excited about it. As you know, they have a lot of students as well. Bill Hawes from Bangor was there with us. So I think the Lehigh Valley school districts will be very excited that we can make this work. So anything we can do to provide that support, we're certainly willing to do that. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Appreciate you both coming. Education is the most important thing that our society can give to the next generation. And we're doing it well in this area, and I know Sarah's doing it well too, because I heard from somebody who used to work with your district. Anything else on this, Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Campos, Ms. Hogan? Carr? Any questions anybody has from the public on the Nurture Nature Center? The Easton, it's the old Easton Iron and Metal site, just in case, I don't think we ever actually identified the site, but it is the old Easton Iron and Metal site on Bushkill Drive. It's an area of the city that has undergone tremendous growth between the Silk Mill and the Williams Arts Center, actually the Lafayette College Film and Media School down on the other end. And in the middle, of course, is the Carl Center Arts Trail. This facility would be connected to the Arts Trail by a pedestrian bridge that is a trestle railroad, an old railroad trestle right now that would be upgraded to include a bicycle hiking path, but walking path to get from one side of the creek to the other. If you haven't been to the Carl Sterner Arts Trail, it was the vision of Richard McAteer, as I said in my opening prayer. He had visited an arts trail in New Jersey and said, "You got to do this, Sal. You got to do this. You got to do it." And I didn't know anything about it, so I went and visited the arts trail. I said, "This is great." Never would I have expected the arts trail to do as much as it's done in the last 10 years. 8 years. We named it after Carl Sterner. I was very proud and honored to do that and have City Council approve it. But the cooperation and partnership we have with the college has given us over $2 million worth of sculptures from Stephen Tobin. Is it Stephen? Yeah, Stephen Tobin. And from Mr. Ball donating it. That is, and with all the other art pieces down there in the dog park and the Tree of Life, it's really an interesting place now where people can walk and hike. Having your facility across the creek is just mind-boggling what it can do for that area of the city.
I'm not sure how I got through the presentation without mentioning that part. You're absolutely right.
I know.
That's one of the key interesting pieces for us, is to be able to take students to have an indoor experience and then outdoor experience.
Yeah.
We already do guided tours on the Carl Sterner Arts Trail. We have people looking and learning about the birds and the trees. But to be able to do it right from our doorstep is an asset that is incredibly valuable to us and attractive to schools, especially now in a time when being indoors isn't always ideal, having outdoor opportunities. So Thank you for bringing up one of the key points that somehow
There's so many we could mention.
I know.
There's so many we could mention about Nurture Nature. We didn't talk about the NASA NOAA affiliation. That is really big. It's a national recognition.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of that. So thank you for allowing me to do this project. I think it'll be really good for the citizens.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments for them? Any questions or comments from the city council? Okay, at this point, we move into public comment on agenda items only. Anyone who has any comments or questions or concerns about the agenda? If not, there is a point at the end of the meeting for public comment on any item, concern, or question dealing with the city of Easton. So we'll move into the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Okay, under the consent agenda, we have a resolution that would make various appointments to the authority boards and commissions. We also have a developers agreement between the city of Easton and ODG 100-116 Northampton Street, which is the Commodore project. And then we also have the resolution that would approve, that would authorize the administration to apply for this grant that was just discussed.
I
I'll
move
move
the consent
the consent
agenda.
agenda.
Okay, Councilman O'Connell move the consent agenda. Will you second
I'll
it?
second it.
I made a mistake. I apologize.
No way.
I did.
That's on the record.
I'll put it in the minutes.
Back up the tape.
Yeah. I'm sorry. The resolution's going to be voted on later. The other thing for the consent agenda was approving a memorandum of understanding between the city of Easton and Northampton County, which would allow us to enter their private parking lots to do some work for our city's MS4 program.
Okay, move the consent agenda.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Again, any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana,
Aye.
and Mayor Panto.
Aye.
Sorry about that, guys.
At this time, I'll receive the report of the annual report from the fire department for city council and move into committee reports. Councilmember Brown is not here this evening, but I will mention, as he would, last night we did have a rather lengthy meeting that went over the most exciting thing we could ever go over, and that, of course, is the 2020 audit, which was finally completed. And I'm happy and very proud to point out that the city did end up in a surplus again last year, or 2 years ago. Moving into COVID, that was really helpful. We got through COVID year 20 and went into 21 with a surplus. So we've added to the surplus in the city. The general fund surplus is now up to $5.8 million. 14 years ago was minus $4 million. So we're really excited about that. Mark Lisinecki's here and our former finance director. They played a big part in that, so I want to thank them publicly. Moving on to Economic Development Committee, Councilmember O'Connell.
Mayor, because of my position as chair of the Economic Development Committee, I've been made an ex officio member of the GEDP board. I attended my first board meeting by phone last Friday, January 7th, and was introduced to other board members. Yesterday, I met with Economic Development Director John Kingsley. He and Mark Tomanek and later Mike Bennett gave me a detailed rundown of the department's current activities and future plans. And later in this meeting, I will be introducing the resolution that has been previously referenced, authorizing the application of a grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration for financial assistance toward ecotourism in the Lehigh Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman O'Connell. Councilman Sultana, Planning and Codes Committee.
Mayor, we have not met yet.
Okay.
I reached out to the following members, and we are most likely to meet this week, actually.
Thank you.
Yep.
Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Ruggles.
Thank you. I just want to mention to council that at our next meeting, at the second meeting in January, the police chief is going to come in and talk about the department, and he and I have kind of set up a program where he will have various police officers come in over the course of the year at various times and talk about their particular divisions within the police department. And the intent here is to not only provide council with a better understanding of the organizational structure of the police department, but also the public, and get people to understand some of the various things that they do, and you know, just the immense amount of training that they have, and all of that. So just going to make it public here at council. So the chief is starting off, and he'll be doing that this next meeting.
Sounds good. Public Works Committee, Councilman Eddinger is not here. I'll introduce his resolution later in the meeting about the contract for Center Square.
I have Dr. Ruggles.
Oh, that's fine.
He's involved in
That's fine with me. Administration Committee, Councilman Milan isn't here. Report of our city solicitor, Mr. Shear.
Thank you, Mayor. We were a little late, as people observed, because we were in executive session, and we covered the three different things that happened in executive session. We discussed real estate, we discussed personnel issue, and we discussed resolution of litigation.
Thank you,
And
Mr. Shear.
and I have no other report.
Thank you. Mayor's report. I just want to mention that at our next Tuesday night committee meeting, the solicitors and administrative team have been working on a residential parking permit program amendment to our ordinance. You may remember that I mentioned this about a year ago, and everybody thought I was ending the residential parking permit program. That does not happen. It's was never meant to happen. But we wanted a way to say, can we limit the new development from getting those street parking passes that limit our people who live downtown for a long time? They've not been able to park on the street. So we'll talk about that, and we'll have a public hearing on that in 2 weeks. And we'll also, Mr. Shear and Mr. Jeremy, oh my gosh. I know. I just saw, oh my gosh. That just slipped my brain. It's a senior moment. Tough being 30. But
That's part of the new gamma variant.
oh, really?
Yeah. It's something like kryptonite. You forget Mr. Superman back here, Mr.
Oh, is that what it is?
Clark, yeah.
He's going to work out tomorrow, he said. But anyway, getting back to the parking permit, residential parking permit program will put a moratorium on any new parking passes for people who live in facilities over 6 units. That's very important because we looked at the downtown about all those people who live here who may live in a single home or may live in a home that has 2 apartments. Once you get over 6 apartments, you start getting into some of our big ones. Now, there's an ulterior motive here. The ulterior motive is part of the program is going to be where people who are developing these high rises will have to enter into a contract with the city to provide the parking. Once we run out of parking in our garages, we're not eligible. They're not eligible anymore. So instead of having a 5-story building, they may only build a 3-story building or a 2-story building or whatever.
Well,
it will happen that
Yeah, I would say that the primary purpose of this would not have anything to do necessarily with garages or private spots, but is primarily designed to secure off-street parking that's enjoyed by people of the units that were originally contemplated to be under this parking permit program. And I do want to add that the proposed resolution will grandfather anyone who already has a permit prior to January 1 of this year.
2022.
So that anybody who has permits right now will be able to keep it so long as they continue to reside in an eligible premises. Or if there's not an newly eligible premises, and that this whole purpose of this resolution is simply an initial step, almost like a moratorium, because the city will engage then the committee to explore all the alternatives and all the ability to meet parking needs long term. So there's a planning process involved, but we don't want the horse to be out of the barn and find that we have no permits available for those people living in the smaller housing units where there would not be necessarily have been planning, or they couldn't because they're pre-existing before you even had, so people parked on the street in those old days in those old homes. But I don't want to mix it in with whatever the city's existing parking is.
Thank you. We'll listen to
Mayor, I
our
have a
legal
question.
advisor.
So it's basically going to be to amend the residential parking permit ordinance as it stands now, and anyone over 6 units
Will be exempt.
will be
Not
exempt.
be allowed. Also, I want to just mention we got the final rules finally for ARPA. It's 467 pages long. The federal government loves to destroy trees.
That's why.
So I didn't print it out. I printed out the National League of Cities summary, which is the most important part. And those 2 documents I've read, and so has staff. And we're probably going to come back to City Council with a revised budget because some of the things that we thought we could spend the money on may not be eligible. So we're going to go through that again. Next week when I'm in Washington, I have 2 sessions about ARPA funds and how to, not only how to spend them, but how to account for them, because we are subject to federal audit. And we want to make sure that we don't spend money on something that we got to repay back in 2 or 3 years. And the last thing I will say is that I went through the Commodore project, Lewis and I, last week, and you probably see the crane. It's up. It's in their building. They got the steel going in. They're at the 2nd floor. That's an iconic project, and I'm really, the owner of Venture X was there. He's taking all of the offices are on the upper levels, the office space, which we thought would be difficult to rent. There's only 1,700 square feet left on the 1st floor, and he thinks he has a matter of fact, that afternoon they were showing, at 2 o'clock, they were showing a prospective tenant. So we're very, very pleased with what Garrett has done down there, and look forward to the completion sometime. I think he said maybe as early as the end of the year. So we're looking forward to that. All right, moving on to correspondence. There's no correspondence. There's no unfinished business, so we'll go right into new business, Madam Clerk.
Mayor,
I'm sorry. I forgot Lewis again. I keep forgetting your report of the city administrator.
just a
14
quick-
years, I still didn't get used to this form of government.
That's right. Just a quick update. the administration and the AFSCME union have reached a tentative agreement, and our plan is to bring that agreement to City Council potentially at the next meeting. So I just wanted to make sure I provided that update. The second thing is, which there's going to be some social media coverage, if you will, about the closure or partial closure at times of the 4th Street corridor. Actually, Mr. Hopkins is here. Dave, if you want to come up, maybe talk a little bit about the potential closure. It's going to be off and on, potentially weather permitting, starting next week as the garage is built through about April. Again, there's a lot of variables here, but there is going to be a partial closure, and I'll let Dave talk a little bit about it since he's the project lead on this.
So starting next week, hopefully, if the weather breaks a little bit, the crane will be delivered to the site and constructed, and then we'll begin the process of shipping 477 precast pieces to construct a 6-floor structure. In order to do that safely, a lot of these are really wide, 15, 16 feet wide. During the delivery process in business hours, we'll be shutting down the southbound lane of 4th Street at each of the intersections and allowing the trucks to flow smoothly. All traffic can travel northbound. We're working with our Main Street group to try and get some signage up to make sure that everyone knows the businesses are open. It was important to us not to strand them during this process so that we can accomplish what we need to. We're thinking it's about a 13-week effort. We told the contractor that they will need to place the barricades out at 7 a.m. and take them back in at the end of the business day, which is generally 3:30. Could be an occasional overage depending on if they need to get something done. So the roadway will be open to two-way traffic nights and weekends, and that's the plan. And I'm not sure what day next week the machine will get here, but it's a very large unit, and it's got about a 220-foot boom on it. So kind of looking forward to seeing it.
Dr. Ruggles?
Is there a specific section of 4th that would be closed during this period that there is closure? I mean, is this from Ferry to Spring Garden? Is this from
Bushkill to Larry Holmes Drive, the entire length,
whole length?
southbound.
What are the hours, Dave? Is it the whole
7 to 3:30.
7 to 3:30? Okay, Monday through Friday.
Yeah, one of the things that complicates it, at least for now, is that Spring Garden is one way in, which is why we can't bring traffic from Bushkill Street in, because you could strand.
You have to turn right and go behind the police station.
And we're nervous about buses and trucks coming in. We could strand a truck back there, and it could kind of get messy, and there's not really going to be staff up there. So we figured,
just an observation is that if at the point where you have one-way traffic going north, 4th Street will be northbound only, 2nd Street would be northbound only. So the only way that you're going to end up going south, other than going over to Larry Holmes Drive, would be down Northampton Street through the circle. So,
that's correct.
yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how much that's going to impact the southbound traffic, but it's because you're both going north. That used to be one went south, one went north, even one back one way. So
if we would have only built 4th Street 70 feet wide, we wouldn't have an issue. But since the truck is taking up both lanes as it approaches, the good news is that it's a slow speed operation, and there's no perfect way to do this. It's it's hard to get something that big, and I mean they're extra large trailers.
So as they're bringing those pieces in, the road is closed. It's not open to northbound traffic.
It is.
It is open.
Yes. So that's why we didn't want to strand any of the businesses so that they couldn't be accessed. So the traveling public can travel there too. It's not unsafe to drive with the truck. There's just not enough room to have opposing traffic. And it's not, the trucks aren't going to constantly be on the road. There's probably, if you can picture, each one of these loads has to pull up to the site. The crane has to pick it, place it. That truck will go to a staging area and then another one. So they'll line up at the Lehigh Drive parking lot, which is what's prompting the 4th Street corridor closure. And it was the most efficient way we could think of to get the pieces quickly and get them off the road as soon as possible, rather than,
So when they're actually picking them up off of the truck, the road closes?
No, the truck will pull all the way over to the front of the site, and because it's only one lane of traffic, they can get by. Because the pick and the travel are away from the roadway.
I'm driving down looking at this piece of concrete up over the top.
When you see that 20-ton piece of concrete, don't drive under it. Drive around it.
I'm sure there'll be, we may have to tweak it. Theoretically, this works on paper like all things, and then you get into the practice and you find out you need to acclimate and adjust. So I'm hoping we can do what we think we can do.
Just one other question. You're saying that hopefully, weather permitting issues. I mean, is there possibility that then this gets put off longer? I know we've been put off a week, but I mean,
I don't think so. One of the things that delayed us is that the crane weighs almost 1 million pounds, and so to prepare for something that heavy, the site has to be compacted to a certain degree, so that when the crane is actually getting into position and rolling in, it can't tilt one way or the other. It's a kind of a highly orchestrated process to get it where it needs to be, and so once it's placed, as it picks, the garage will go up 6 floors before it moves back. So it'll build the garage in what we call bays, stable bays that go up the full 6 stories. It'll go to the second bay, construct that, and then work its way back. And then finally, at the end of this process, the crane will end up in the road to build that last bay. There's no, we're out of room at that point. And so at the end of this process, there will be a full closure of that section between Northampton Street and Spring Garden Street. Hopefully for 2 weeks, we're going to try and minimize it to the extent possible. But, and the entire time we have to think about how to keep the school operating, get the parents into the zone safely, get the buses up Church Street. It's kind of a lot of moving parts, but we think we've thought through most of the logistics. We just have to execute it.
Any other questions for Mr. Hopkins? Thank you, David. So far, the extended forecast for next week doesn't look like it'll be here next week. But you'll be handling other responsibilities that week if the snow does come. And the snow. Okay, moving right along.
Okay, under new business. We have a resolution being introduced by Mr. O'Connell, and this one is actually authorizing the city to submit the application to the United States Economic Development Administration, which was discussed previously in the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second, any discussion? Roll call.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana?
Aye.
Mayor Piento?
Aye.
And Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Thank you all very much for your support. Thank you for our superintendents for your support, and Rachel, I can't wait to see the date it opens. Moving right along.
We have one more resolution being introduced by Dr. Ruggles, and it's where the city has reviewed and approves an agreement with DePaul and Company Incorporated. It's for the park improvements to Center Square.
So move.
Second.
Moved in second by Mr. O'Connell. Dave, you want to give just a timetable on the Center Square project?
You got anything else that you're working on?
We'll just disrupt the entire city.
Well, we're trying not to do that. We're trying to get one done before one starts. So Center Square is actually, there's a lot of moving parts with that too. It's a PennDOT. The part of it's a PennDOT project that's being managed through PennDOT's ECMS system, their electronic construction management. The other part is the city managed part, which is mostly going to focus on the park itself. Because we're going to be reducing Center Lane or Center Square from 2 lanes to 1 lane, both projects kind of have to meet in the middle because we don't want one to finish and then have one half built and then have problems, and we need to prepare for the events, get through the bike race, get through Heritage Day. So with the award of the city's part tonight, once that contractor, I get him the executed agreement, he'll post his bonds and insurances, and he'll be able to order long lead time items. I'm hoping physically they can start the work in late March, early April. So that'll mean that the park itself will be demolished. You know, there'll be some demo. It's not, that part's not really complicated. It's mostly the coordination and logistics of making these two projects coordinate so that they get completed roughly at the same time. The completion date for our portion is July 1st on paper. For the PennDOT portion, they awarded their project a little bit, I think right before the holidays. The long lead time on that is the ordering of the traffic signals. And so as we convert 2nd Street, Ferry Street, and Spring Garden Street to two-way traffic, which it hasn't been, I'm not even sure when it's.
Early 60s,
Yeah, it's been a long time.
60 years.
And I try to envision
70.
driving up Northampton Street and making a left to go to the post office. It seems like a very odd movement, but we'll get used to it like we did for 4th Street. So we're hoping that they can get the signals in, the roads converted, and we're going to have to, keep an eye on that, because if you recall when we reconverted 4th Street, there were some strange motorist behaviors, and people were crossing the double yellow to make the turn, and so you have to acclimate to those issues. And pedestrians in particular have to be careful because they have to look the other way, which they haven't done for a long time. So there'll be a period of adjustment that we'll keep an eye on those things, make sure it's functioning okay. In fact, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that the intersection at Spring Garden 2nd will be removed, and that will become a four-way stop, just like the intersection at 4th and Spring Garden. It'll function much better than it does today. And then our hope is to get them finished with the conversion and into Center Square by June, have them start doing the sidewalk work, and ultimately have the two projects meet right around Heritage Day-ish in that vicinity, right in that early July period. And that's what we're planning. Hopefully that works. So that's kind of the time frame. PennDOT made the completion of their portion of the project. I think it's October. I think they're going to beat that date. I don't think the contractor's going to want to stay downtown the whole year. They probably have other obligations. That's that, and the conversion of the signals from flashing to red, yellow, green is going to be a big change for everybody. Well, I'd like to qualify that by saying I don't think we're going to get it right on the first try. I think the timing is based on computer modeling, and the world doesn't necessarily behave.
Especially our Center Square.
Yeah, so I'm imagining we're going to have to tweak things a little bit, but
I think we should have those when you go run over those treads, and when your tires, you get I think at every stop bar we should have them. When it turns red, they pop up. So all those people that go all the way around the circle get flat tires.
You'd probably have a lot of people stuck there.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
So I have to tell you, Dave, when we made 4th Street two-way, there was a guy came up to me, there's no way we can make this one way, two ways, because there's just not enough room. Come with me. I walked out in the street. I said, look down 4th Street. Can you see past Ferry? Yep. Same width? Yep. Well, that's two-way down there.
and now we're driving 16-foot wide concrete pieces.
Dave, you mentioned a bike race. Why don't you give us the date?
I'm sorry?
The date of the bike race.
May 28th, Saturday, is the new date for the Criterium this year. We did it in September last year. It was more of a fall race because they got pushed. The Tour of Somerville was pushed because of COVID. And this year, the Tour of Somerville, if you don't know, is one of the oldest professional bicycle races in the United States. They've always run on Memorial Day, and so we're happy to be the host on the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend.
I still get compliments on that event.
Yeah, we're very excited. I believe they're going to use the same course layout, except this year it's just a little more complicated by being under construction. But you know, our goal again is to really reduce the, you know, any impact to the businesses. We were able to add in, we are going to be doing some quadrant work. That we're working on that in the field because of the financing, but we're hoping to make, right now at least, the southeast quadrant look like the Crayola quadrant. So there's just more room outside. It's a much better. It's got more recreational value. So that'll be kind of a moving target if we can do the other two and maintain, you know, ample parking like the Crayola quadrant does. But so on paper, I think we're looking at a substantial completion in July, hopefully.
Is there any thought on how we may be progressing with diagonal parking on that side of the circle?
Yeah, that can be easily done. We've looked at it internally quite a bit, and with the roads being how they are today and existing in a one-way condition, we're going to be, so if you're coming over the Free Bridge, which at PM peak is a real busy movement, and if we're going to be pushing all the cars to Second and Northampton, and then they'll have to go north to Spring Garden, and right now that signal it's a phase signal. It doesn't function great, and it doesn't move a lot of traffic quickly, and I think we'll have a lot of queuing there. So I think I'd rather wait till we get everything converted to two-way, see how that functions, and then when you have more options to circulate, we could look at that. And it is worth looking at. I mean, I think we had a net 18 space gain by doing that there. 300 block we're very comfortable with. I've heard nothing but good things. The 200 block, I think, pushes that limit a little bit. So we wanted to be cautious.
Nice job on the snowstorms this weekend. The ice on Sunday morning. I was able to get to church with no problems early at 7:30 because they salted ahead of time, which was good. And then it rained. Yeah,
See what this weekend brings.
Let's hope Sunday and Monday. That's because I'm in Washington next week. Every time I go down there, it's in the wintertime. It snows.
You may get stuck.
That place shuts down. No, I won't. I won't go if there's a threat of that. Okay, moving on for a resolution approving that contract.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Mrs. Sultana?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
And Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Okay. Anybody from City Council have anything to say before I open the floor to public comment? Public comment at this time, any matter on City Council, comments, concerns, questions about the City of Easton? Anybody like to address City Council? I see no one. I'll move for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
Moved in second by Mrs. Sultana. Roll call, please.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana?
Aye.
And Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have
Bye,
a good night.
Dave.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
David.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes. What time?